chilengedwe ndi chathu tiyeni tichisamale mkalango nyanja nyama za kuchire zofunika tisamale mapiri tidzalemo mitengo zoipa za kumafakitale titayemo samala ntaka yolima yakuka ndikukokoloka mvula ikuvuta dziko likutenthedwa zonse zichifukwa cha kuwonongeka kwa chilengedwe abo mama bungwe amipingo makampani tili ndi udindo oteteza chilengedwe ndiena tonse tiziteteza chilengedwe ntaka yolima yakuka.
This is Mpondabwino village, found just a few kilometers from Zomba city. And this is Mbayani township, just a few kilometers from the main center of Blantyre city. And these houses are found in what used to be Sochi Mountain. Slowly, the mountain is becoming a residential area for some people in Blantyre. True are similar stories from many parts of this country, where just a decade ago, one could not think of settling down and later on build residential mansions. In this series of 2010 Malawi State of the Environment and Outlook Report, we will highlight the current population and human settlements in Malawi and how these are affecting the state of the environment. In Malawi, high population growth is placing considerable and increasing strain on natural resource base. Increased population density has led to increased demand for land for human settlements, both in rural and urban areas. According to United Nations Census and Housing Survey conducted in 2001, Malawi is the least urbanized in Southern Africa, but it has a higher urban population growth of about 5.2% than the regional average of 3.5%. Declining land sizes and earnings from agriculture have induced this migration, according to the National Statistical Office findings in 2005.
As you are aware, that the National Statistical Office conducts the population and housing census, and this is where we do get information related to population. I think what is clearly coming from the census, in terms of like the density, the way areas are populated, it's mostly in the urban areas where there's growing population. Cities like Blantyre and Lilongwe are growing at a faster pace. So even in terms of density, you find that Lilongwe and Blantyre have got higher densities, which is the number of persons per square kilometer. For example, the population density for Lilongwe city, in the last census that was done in 1998, we had found that there are about just over 900 persons per square kilometer. But in the recently conducted census, there are about 1,500 persons per square kilometer. In terms of Blantyre city, in 1998, we had just over 2,200 persons per square kilometer. And in the 2008 census, we found that there are about 3,000 persons per square kilometer. Malawi, we've always known that we're growing at a faster pace because the fertility levels are high. So we still remain a fast-growing country. The growth rates are quite high, but this is not unusual for this region of Africa. If every 10 years we tell you that the population is growing in Malawi, we continue to have the very same land area which we're sharing and the resources, they remain the same. This can have consequences. As I said before, we've got firewood that's being used for cooking, which means it's got implications. So looking at the same land area and the growing population, I think these are issues that have to be looked at.
Increased urbanization as a result of rural-urban migration in search of employment could also be accounted for by extension of urban area boundaries to incorporate surrounding villages and raid properties developed in the urban periphery.
munga kuzimba kwathu kuno makampani kulibe takati kusakasaka zinchito kulibe na zinchitozo zikhali zikutipangisa zinthu zina zoti tichoke m'mavuto ngati apo koma zikulephereka kulibe atingapo pangeso geni ndama kuti pangire geni ikusowa ndizimapezeka kuti malimbana ndizi chifukwa chochita china yoti chingatulipa sandrama tikutivuta
kalero olo makolo watu sizinali chochi mene kwaelera mu chochi koma ife chifukwa kuti mwina ndikuchulukana kwathu kukangati kuti malo akutitani akutivuta ndi omweomwewo tingopanga kali kumapanga kumalima kumatani.
On household and housing characteristics, the 2008 Malawi Population and Housing Census main report showed that household size by region is 5.2 for the north, 4.7 for the central, and 4.4 for the southern region, with a national average of 4.6. According to the 2009 National Statistical Office report, there were 2,869,933 dwelling units in Malawi. However, using the average household size of 4.6, only 2,842,861 houses would be required to house the population. The 2001 UN Habitat Report indicates that about 21,000 houses will be needed every year to meet the rising demand for housing in urban areas by 2020. This suggests that Malawi's cities need to be better equipped to deal with the growing number of people migrating into urban centers. Another concern is the increasing poor quality housing visible in rural areas and urban unplanned settlements, according to the 2009 Population and Housing Census report. The report ranks 43% of houses as belonging to traditional housing, 34% semi-permanent, and finally 23% as permanent. With poor housing on the rise, overcrowding is a typical condition in most unplanned settlements, where houses are relatively smaller and more cramped. There is also need to have a national construction standard to safeguard against natural disasters, such as earthquakes, as have been experienced in Garonga. There is need as well to prevent cases of accidents arising from poorly planned construction works. A very good example is the accident that happened at Kip's restaurant in Blantyre. Are local chiefs doing anything to help address population issues among grassroots communities? One such chief who has attracted the attention of local and international organizations is Traditional Authority Kwataini in Cheu.
One of the reasons is the early marriages. You know, early marriages, it's one of the effects or one of the reasons that speeded up the rapid growth of our population. The second one is now, you know, we have this one, an honor, like an honor whereby in certain tribes or certain communities, when somebody has no child or has not born a child, you know, he feels like inferior. Now, those who gives birth to several children, like 10 to 15, 20, it's like a status. Now, the feeling of status also has even, speeded up the population growth. The other one is now the polygamy. Polygamy also has increased has an effect on the population growth. Just because when you marry one wife, you give birth to, or you bear 2, 3, 4, 5 children, then you remarry. Now the second wife would also wish to have, equal children as do the first wife. Now that also has increased the number of, has also impacted on the population growth. Talk of the climate change. There are some of the issues that, that promote climate change. Talk of deforestation. Talk of burning of charcoal. Talk of encroachment in reserves. All those are due to population increase. When you see a certain area with a thick forest, that was termed as a forest, a graveyard. This time around, people have even gone into graveyards, burning charcoal, cutting, firewood, doing all sorts of things. And the saddest thing, you can even see a graveyard bare. That is against our tribe. or our ethics as traditional leaders. Population growth also impacts on environment, and if we are not careful enough, if we can just leave it open that everybody should just give birth to how many or any number of kids, that means we are promoting rapid growth of population, thereby reducing each and every opportunity that we would have made use of if at all we are at a minimal rate.
The population growth rate of 2.9%, according to the National Statistical Office, implies more strain on the available social and economic services. With a young and dependent population of children less than 18 years of age, representing 50% of the population, the success of future strategies thus lies in the youth, who represent the majority of the country's labor force. In Malawi, the major environmental problem in human settlement, especially in urban areas, is the existence of slums, particularly in unplanned settlements. This raises concerns in waste management, especially due to the fact that there are no designated dumping sites by the city authorities at times. Most urban populations live in slums characterized by, among other things, lack of potable water and poor sanitation facilities. These settlements have come about as a result of rural-urban migration and increased fertility rates in urban areas, resulting in high population densities in these areas. The situation has resulted in lack of proper housing, with lack of basic services contributing to slum conditions. The high proportion of households living in traditional housing and construction of poor quality housing may be generally due to lack of capital for house development. Land allocation in cities is another major hindrance as well. Overcrowding in human settlements results in social health challenges that in turn affect the society as well. The incidence of contagious disease as a result of improper waste disposal is common in slum areas. The most vulnerable are children, who may suffer from airborne and other water-related diseases if in contact with the infected people.
Tsiku ndi tsiku nthawi zati magwisa ntchito amuchisiujeni muchonchi kumachapira mumtsinje angasimakhala kuti madzi asiye timakachapa mumtsinje zimatikhudza kwambiri chifukwa choti ngasi zinyala zikapita kumusiko thanda kuti tikakachapa mumtsinje muja zovala ndiye kuti zithe kuti atenga matenda.
It should be noted that house construction in unplanned and traditional housing areas adversely affects the physical environment in various ways. For example, areas used for brick molding are heavily degraded, leaving borrow pits that act as waste dumping sites and breeding grounds for mosquitoes and other disease vectors. There is urgent need, therefore, to develop a settlement policy or other legal instrument to guide settlement development. Due to the absence of the policy, settlements have developed in a haphazard and unsafe manner, particularly in informal urban settlements and rural areas. The growth of unplanned settlements is characterized by unsanitary conditions, overcrowding, lack of safe and potable water, and lack of services such as roads and drainage systems. Major urban areas are also characterized by traffic congestion, including pedestrian, bicycle, and motorized traffic. This could be due to poor city planning, which never incorporated the impact of growing populations and need for expansion. The establishment of the rural growth centers to redirect rural populations to small urban areas is one way of addressing the issue of rapid urbanization. There is need for enhanced linkages between government, NGOs, the private sector, and communities to be developed to coordinate efforts and ensure a comprehensive approach is taken to settlement development. Finally, a review of settlement policies and laws is needed to ensure that they are relevant to the Malawian context and are effectively enforced. This will enable the country to achieve sustainable, environmentally friendly settlement development.
Chilengedwe ndi chatu tieni tichisamale mkalango nyanja za kuchire zofunika tisamale mapiri tidzalemo mitengo zoipa za kumafakitale titayemo samala ntaka yolima yaguga ndikukokoloka mvula ikuvuta dziko likutenthedwa zonse zichifukwa chakuwonongeka kwa chilengedwe aboma mabungwe amipingo makampani tili ndi udindo oteteza chilengedwe ndiyena tonse tidziteteza chilengedwe nthaka yolima yakuka ndikukokoloka mvula ikuvuta dziko likutenthedwa zonse zichifukwa chakuwonongeka kwa chilengedwe aboma mabungwe amipingo makampani tili ndi udindo oteteza chilengedwe ndiyena tonse tidziteteza chilengedwe chilengedwe ndi chathu tiyeni tichisamale mkhalango nyanja nyama zakuchire zofunika tisamale mapiri tidzalemo mitengo zoipa zakumafakitale titayemo samala nthaka yolima yakuka ndikukokoloka mvula ikuvuta dziko likutenthedwa zonse zichifukwa chakuwonongeka kwa chilengedwe aboma mabungwe amipingo makampani tili ndi udindo oteteza chilengedwe ndiyena tonse tidziteteza chilengedwe nthaka yolima yakuka ndikukokoloka mvula ikuvuta dziko likutenthedwa zonse zichifukwa chakuwonongeka kwa chilengedwe aboma mabungwe amipingo makampani tili ndi udindo oteteza chilengedwe ndiyena tonse tidziteteza chilengedwe ndiyena tonse tidziteteza chilengedwe